Capital Views is sponsored by Northrim Bank, Alaska Oil and Gas Association, ConocoPhillips, and Linden.
Hi, I'm Tim Brandon with Alaska Legislative Digest, and welcome to Capitol Views. And a welcome today to Robert Venables, the Executive Director of Southeast Conference, which is the largest and the oldest of the regional economic development organizations in the state. So, Robert, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Robert, the big question is how are conditions, how are economic conditions in Southeast Alaska?
Well, it's been quite a turnaround since the pandemic, really hit this region harder than any others, largely because of the tourism impacts. But we have come back with a roar, and most of our economic sectors, a few challenges, but most of them have a vibrancy to them that we're really pleased to see, almost at pre-pandemic levels and on many fronts.
Well, in the case of tourism, you're going to be above pre-pandemic. As I understand the projections, the cruise ship volume keeps growing.
That is true. We reached a new peak last year, and I think right now just kind of finding that sustainable level that can be a good quality visitation for our visitors who often come back as independents, and we're seeing that sector strong as well.
So the independent structure and independent travelers tend to spend more too. So that's good for the economy.
Yes, and it takes them a little longer to get around our islanded communities, so we're glad to have them here for days at a time.
Robert, what problem areas do you see? I know there's always there's good news and bad news is a mixture of things. What problem areas do you see?
Well, a couple of underlying issues that are, I think, statewide and even nationwide, has to do with things that are underlying the workforce issues that we face, and that is with housing and childcare, and that has been a big obstacle for our economic development growth, job growth, just having those constraints. And then the sector probably that is hurting the worst right now is our fisheries, and that is very problematic at the moment and a large concern for us here in Southeast and many parts of the state as well.
What's the problem in fisheries? I mean, what's kind of driving that?
Well, there's a lot of different issues, and I think that's why that was one of the focuses we had at our recent regional gathering, where we brought the processors and the fleet and the marketers and the fish and game together to really take a look at that and start mapping out a path forward. One of the problematic areas was just the glut of fish that was happening with the collusion between Russia and China, and just putting a lot of cheap fish onto the market, undercutting the markets that our fishermen and processors could sell into, and the prices collapsed and shut down early last year, and it looks to be problematic this year. But we're pleased to see the efforts of our delegation and the president signing that executive order to put a stop to that.
Robert, does it have any particular impacts on one community more than others in Southeast?
It's pretty devastating. The fleet pitches its fish to processors, and so even communities that don't land the fish for processing still have the fleet that participates in that fishery. So it is something that is hurting the entire region.
So it hurts also communities who depend on fish tax and
Right.
important part of the economic base.
Yes.
Um, Is there a prospect that some plants may not operate this year?
Actually, we're very pleased to see the most recently vacated processors turned into over to new ownership, and so both the Ketchikan and Petersburg facilities, which have been put up for sale, were successfully bought on by other companies. So we're pleased to see that.
Robert, who are the new owners?
So in Petersburg, my understanding is that EC Phillips will be taking that one, and they're already a strong regional player. And then and Silver Bay is the other one that is also a strong regional player here in Southeast and across the state, taking over the Ketchikan plant.
And who sold the Ketchikan plant?
Both of those were Trident facilities.
I see. Trident is the state's largest seafood operator, so that's That's part of their corporate retrenching that's happening.
Yes.
Uh, is there any, of course, workforce is an issue that affects all seasonal industries, fisheries as well as tourism. Um, has that eased any in the last year or so?
No.
Particularly for
No, it's actually gotten worse, especially with the rebound with some of our seasonal economies. The need for housing is more acute than ever.
is there any near-term solution to housing? I guess it's a statewide problem that
It
affects
is
every.
a statewide problem, no near-term solutions, but there's a lot of effort being put to it, and I think that folks are attacking it from a number of different angles, and we'll hopefully see some easing here in the next couple of years.
Is the in terms of brighter spots, are there, what's good that's happening?
Yes,
I guess
there's lots of goods happening. The top three areas that we're focused on in Southeast Conference is, energy, transportation, our ferry system, and then mariculture, where we have a large award of federal funds to help us accelerate and stand up a mariculture industry, pretty much statewide, the southern coastal areas that are, prime areas for mariculture development. There's a lot of excitement in that space, and we're really pleased to be working with a very robust partnership toward that goal.
no, Robert, can you tell us just what mariculture is? Is it just it's also known as sea farming, aquaculture?
Well, in many parts of the country, it's referred to as aquaculture, but in those parts of the country, they sometimes entertain farmed salmon, which is not allowed here, and we have no interest in. So mariculture really talks about that farming of the sea that it includes everything but the fin fish. So no fin fish is involved with the mariculture industry, but everything else is under that wave or umbrella.
So this would involve clams and oysters. Are there any specific communities where there are sort of hotbeds of growth in this industry?
I think most communities have interest. Now that interest is scalable. So some of our smaller communities are really not interested in large scale industry. Maybe they want to do more of subsistence cottage industry like commercial. Other communities are more open to a larger scale industry, which is what we really need to achieve if there's going to be, an economy of scale that supports household wages. And that's really the goal of our efforts, is to stand up that larger industry scale so that Alaskans can work, live, and earn their household income in the place that they call home.
And this really ties in. Does it fit with seasonal fishing industry at all? I mean,
There-
can this
there-
supplement?
Yeah, there's some areas that don't mesh well, but others seasonally they do. So we're hopeful that some of these processing plants might lend some capacity when they're not being in use peak season. That some of that infrastructure can be used for the mariculture industry as it's getting stood up.
Well, that sounds encouraging. I mean, I'm sure the coastal communities sort of need all the help they can get at times like this.
We do indeed, and it's one of the real bright spots that we see going forward. The Alaska Mariculture Task Force has done a great job over the last two administrations, and this one is very supportive, and we're really pleased to see the possibilities take root, and we have high hopes.
Well, Robert, thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to continuing the discussion.
All right, thank you very much.